Welcome to the Ag Culture Podcast, where we cultivate tomorrow by inspiring agripreneurs and ag innovators through real-life global perspectives in agriculture. I'm Paul Windemuller, your host on this journey of exploration and growth. On today's episode, we're going to continue our conversation that we had last time with Robby Kuster from Green Coffee Company and the Legacy Group. This episode is going to focus more on the people side of the business, their employee management, as well as their influence in the local communities that they operate, and then wrap up with a look at their unique business structure that you don't see a lot in agriculture. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and as always, please like and subscribe to our channel and enjoy the conversation with Robby. Switching gears a little bit, I want to bring up the team of people at Green Coffee Company. I've had the opportunity to speak to a few on the leadership team, hear some of them speak at different events and on different webinars. I'm very impressed by the caliber of people. How do you put together a team like that? And if you want to talk a little bit more about the team you have, where they came from, how many people you're currently employing, and go there.
I'll take each one of those. At the company, we have about 400 employees, right? Those are 400 full-time employees with full health insurance, pensions, bank accounts, the whole nine yards there. We also will employ an additional between 1,000 and 1,600 part-time workers who will come and pick the coffee on the farms. They also have health insurance and other protections and good working conditions. And why do I bring that up is because that is extremely uncommon in the coffee industry. We're some of the only people that register all of our employees and that formally employ all of our employees, even the part-time workers. It's been a huge, really important step for us as we look to modernize the coffee sector. In terms of the management team, we've built the management team over a long time, and these are the best of the best. I referenced our agronomist before. He's worked he's worked for decades in the coffee industry. He was previously in Costa Rica. He learned about GCC and what we were doing, and he reached out to us and wanted to work with us. And it was good timing for us because we were looking for a new agronomist, so we're really happy to have him on board. I was personally a part of bringing Boris Woolner on, our president. And the story that always comes to mind with him is that, I went out to the farms on a number of occasions with different candidates. One of the farms that we visited was, earlier on we were having a number of issues and really like bringing everything together and building this company. And I remember, we took two of our candidates, Boris and another, to this farm where there's a lot of trash outside behind one of the worker housing. And one of the candidates said, he was looking at this big pile of trash and was like, what's going on here? Talking to the farm manager, like, what's going on here? You got to discipline your employees. You have to make sure that they know that this area matters and that they need to be mindful of everything going on. And it was more focused on the discipline aspect. And then at the same spot, Boris walks up and looks out and says, why don't you put a trash can here? And that like difference in thought process of, not looking at something and blaming others, but looking at something and trying to find a solution.
And be practical.
That was a very practical solution. Just put a trash can here and then the trash is going to end up in the trash can. Right. So that sort of practicality, that mindset was really beneficial. We saw that in Boris. He comes, as I mentioned earlier, he's an agro-industrial engineer by trade. He came from the flour industry and had a long career in the flour industry. Our CFO, Leonardo, has worked in large multinational companies based in Latin America. and he's been instrumental in really stepping up a lot of the back end systems, the ERP system, which are really necessary for a company, and all the audited financial statements and everything else you would need as we grow the business. Our hope eventually is to IPO. In order to IPO, you need to have really good back end systems to make
Yep.
sure all of that works. I think in general, the team that we've built out is it's been over a long period of time. We've found the best people, and something that Cole and Adam, who are the two partners at Legacy Group and
Yep.
on the board at GCC, have really impressed on the leadership team is that they demand results, and they demand that the team works really hard and solve solutions in real time. We one thing we really hate is to be reactive to problems as they come up. The goal is always to be proactive. And if people are not proactive in dealing with problems and raising their hand and saying, I have a problem, we got to solve this, they're not going to last long at the company. So there's a really intense focus on results and on delivering value and on constantly looking for ways to make the company better. And so it's been a process to build out the team, but it's really been it's been amazing. We're really happy with the team that we have now. I'll say one more thing on that. Like the newest hire we have, Ted Skodel, who is he's the chief revenue officer for us, and really in charge of kickstarting our roasted coffee sales in the U.S. He was the head of sales and marketing at Intelligentsia, which is one of the largest specialty coffee roasters in the U.S. With over 100 million in annual sales. So we're really looking forward to having him on the team to help launch more aggressively our roasted coffee business in the U.S.
How do you attract people of that caliber? What do you think really brought them to Green Coffee Company?
I think in Colombia, the big thing for us has been, how can we make this industry better, and how can we invest in an industry that has not been invested in? And the people that we've been able to recruit see the passion in our team and see what we're trying to do at every stage of production and every stage of selling the coffee. So for us, just by explaining what we're trying to do, by bringing them out to the farms, by showing them the facilities versus what is typical in Colombia, it's been people just get excited. I mean, whether it's the management team or investors that come out and visit, it's hard not to get excited. I mean, it's why even when GCC was just an idea, I got hooked on what we're doing. And so I think that's one way we attract people. Another way is just making sure, this is true for all companies, making sure your compensation structures are set up in a way that incentivize these high growth, highly focused professionals are incentivized to succeed. And so that's always been a factor in the growth of the business.
Well, you guys must have done a good job at that, because I know for a lot of these people, they didn't, obviously most of them didn't come from Colombia, and to attract talent from cushy areas of the world where they might have come from to an area like Medellin, it's very beautiful. I've seen a lot of pictures. It's very beautiful, but it's definitely probably a little different than a lot of them were used to living in. So to bring that group of people together in a place like that, they definitely see something there that attracted them. So that's pretty cool to see.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a lot of our senior staff is from Colombia itself. So they're a lot of them are used to operating in this climate,
Okay.
but you do have to sort out people who are not going to perform at an international level. So that's a big part of the process when you're sourcing local Colombian talent. And then on top of that, when you're bringing in people from elsewhere, but I think they see the value, they see the entrepreneurial spirit of the company, and the opportunity that exists to really make a difference in this sector.
One maybe a controversial topic that I wanted to bring up. So I read a book a number of years back now. I've actually read it 3 times. It's called The Banana Man. I think that's what the title was. It's about Samuel Zemurray, who was kind of one of the pioneers in the banana sector. back in the early 1900s, so early 20th century, and then eventually took over the United Fruit Company. Um, People in Central America probably don't have very good feelings about the United Fruit Company and that whole era of the early 1900s. You read about what the robber barons, quote unquote robber barons in the U.S. at that time. It was very similar to that in Central America with sugarcane production, banana production, those type of crops. Um, and they basically came in there and took over and kind of ran the country like they owned the place, and they just didn't create a good name for themselves. Didn't really help out the local population that was there. I know you guys are very, very different in what you're doing. There's because you're getting the publicity about those things in a good way, that you're really helping out the communities and doing some very innovative things like you already talked about with your employees, providing a lot of benefits that are unheard of in the industry in Colombia.
Yeah.
What are your feelings? What's your perspective, I guess, on the approach that you guys are taking with Green Coffee Company in that realm of things, and what changes have you seen in the communities? Has there been all positive feedback? Has there been some negative? What was that around?
Sure. I mean, I think from a personal level, no one on the management team would ever want to operate in that sort of way, right?
Right.
That's just on a personal level. And for us, building this business that's going to last a really long time and is really making a difference. For us, that's really important on a personal level. But now I'm just going to take it from like a straight capitalistic standpoint, right? Coffee, unlike bananas and sugarcane and other of these palm oil, for example, right? No one knows and no one cares, honestly, about where these products come from in the market, right? So if you're a banana company, a lot of the time you can get away with being a horrible actor because no one is really paying attention. They're going to grab the bananas and walk out of the store. I mean, this is true with all sorts of industries. So one of the unique things about coffee is that people really care a lot about the farmer and about where their coffee is coming from in a way that would make operating in that sort of way extremely financially irresponsible. You're not going to be able to sell your coffee at a good price. One of the largest producers in Colombia. We're the largest producer in Colombia. One of the largest producers in Colombia right now is in really hot water because it turns out that they deforested huge portions of their farmland over the past few years. Europe is coming out with all of these new regulations that are basically mandating you cannot sell to us if you've deforested a lot of your land. So they're really screwed. I mean, when it comes to like coffee, cacao, in some ways it's growing, or cocoa, excuse me, is growing in some ways in the same direction. But you just can't operate that way. On top of that, when you think of like your positioning locally, right? That's what the consumer is going to think.
Right.
When you're thinking of your position locally, for us, having a really good relationship with the town is fundamental. You're operating in these rural areas that are difficult to get to. They can have quite a bit of poverty, right? You need to have the locals on your side to defend you in not physically, but to defend you in like a meaningful way when people are speaking ill of the company. So for us, it's not an option not to operate in a way that benefits these local communities. We like formally employing all of our workers, having a really good relationship with the mayor, whatever political party he is or she is, having a good relationship with everyone, with all of our stakeholders is like fundamental to people paying us on time, people showing up to work. Like I said, we need between 1,000 and 1,600 pickers to come out and pick the coffee on our farms. How do we attract those people to come? It's like these are often migratory workers who will move through the country to pick coffee. They'll follow the harvest cycle. You need to pay them well. You need to provide them good housing that has Wi-Fi, and other things so that they can contact their families. Like it's not an option not to do these things. And then from a liability perspective, Colombia, as I mentioned earlier, has become more and more of a sophisticated economy, and as that happens, they're starting to crack down more and more on people who are not formally employing their workers, who are not paying into the pension programs and other things like that. We have to do all of those things in order to really build a business that's sustainable. One of the things that's, this is more of a feel good thing that we're doing, but to attract the best talent, we had, I think, 8 of our workers who are working at night and on the weekend just graduated high school. They just got their high school diploma. And we have, I think, like 30 of our workers who never graduated high school in these night classes and weekend classes. Others are taking English. That's important for us because we need them to be able to communicate with our, more and more international team. I mean, so for us, long story short, it's important to us morally, but also like on a capitalistic perspective, we cannot operate like farmers typically operated in the 1990, in the early 1900s, where you could sort of do whatever you want, and you needed to, as they viewed it, probably you needed to like act really forcefully in order to consolidate and get bananas to people in the U.S. who wanted bananas, and they saw that as the best path forward, which is it makes for a good story, but it probably. I can't imagine that guy slept very well at night, or maybe he did. Maybe he had no conscience. I don't know, but I certainly couldn't sleep well at night if I was doing that sort of thing.
What you had mentioned, 50% of your tonnage comes from local growers outside of what Green Coffee Company actually owns.
Yeah.
How has that kind of transformed those operations? Has it made them better? I know you talked about you guys can pay a little bit quicker. You can provide a little bit more stable pricing long term is what you're hoping for. What other benefits are they seeing, and have they been pretty receptive to you moving into the areas?
So it depends on the region. Where. So as the coffee process, right? Farmers will pick their cherries. In the past, they would process the cherries into parchment, and then sell that parchment to like a cooperative or a local buyer. Um, part of the process, we want to purchase the cherries because
Mm-hmm.
we have this really advanced processing facility, and we have 2 of them. We want to use that facility. We want to maximize the use of that facility. We would rather not buy parchment. We would rather save a lot more cost and get a lot more quality out of these farmers' cherries than they would. So in some regions where they're not used to selling cherries, there's been a bit of an education process and explaining to them, look, the sticker price is lower, right? Because you're selling us 5 times the amount of kilos.
Right.
But in the end, you're going to make more money.
And
Because
less work for them too.
way less work for you, way less risk, right?
Yeah.
If you like slept through an alarm and didn't turn off the dryer, or like whatever, it started raining and you left the coffee outside, like you run huge risks of damaging your own product. And so it took, and it's still taking some time for that change to happen, for them to start selling us cherries. Selling cherries, by the way, is common around the world. This is not, again, it's not something that's unique. We're not like reinventing the wheel here.
But it is a different business model to what they're used to in that local area.
Absolutely, right. So that's been a bit of a process, and them starting to trust us, right? You have to build up trust. That can take years at times, right? For these people, imagine you've been operating in this area for generations, right? You own the same plot of land that your grandfather owned, and all of a sudden you see like investment from a bunch of Americans. We're not only American investment, but again, from their perspective, right? You see a bunch of money coming into this region. You start freaking out about like what this means for you, right? You're not going to be very trusting of that behavior. So for us, it's there's you have to build up a meaningful relationship with the farmers around us. On top of that, we have been looking into a lot of different programs and how we're going to uh, help with agronomical assistance at the farm level, selling them the trees in these different bagging systems, right? That's going to be something that we're definitely going to roll out. The other big thing, the traceability programs that we're doing, all of the mapping that we have of our lands, the certifications that we have that give us additional premiums, like the Rainforest Alliance certification. We're in the process of becoming fair trade, getting all of these people into our network, getting their lands mapped, getting all of the traceability data from them. That's really hard for an individual to manage, but easier on a larger scale. They'll be able to generate additional premiums than they would if they were just selling to a local buyer. So we're looking to be in some ways like the center of a wheel, right, where we are the ones that are sourcing all of the product from people around us, and we're providing the additional radial value to these different farmers in the forms of you can provide loans for farms to be able to actually properly fertilize the land in the way that we have adopted from the practices that we've learned from others. You can outsource all of your good practices to others, and so that's what we're working to build up towards. Last year I think we had like 67 farmers. This year I think we had well over 200. I don't remember the
Oh,
exact
wow.
number. I think we
3x
might
the
have had,
growth.
yeah. So it's and as we expand to other regions, it's going to continue to be a part of our production. We will continue to purchase other farms, and we'll continue to process our own coffee because it's very important to have control over a good portion of production. But this is always going to be something that we're going to do to maximize the use of our facilities, and to make sure that we can sell coffee to around like at every point around the year to our clients.
How do you balance that value that you are creating with what amount you're gonna give back to the farmer on that value that's coming back in that wasn't there before versus what you're going to keep as a company? I mean, you've got to get rewarded for investing in technology and the systems and all that. What's that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that we have to balance. I think one of the most important things for us is providing that consistency to farmers to feel like that they are being rewarded for selling to us, and that they can continue to reinvest in their land and continue to build a better and more resilient farm. So I don't really have a number for you in terms of like we're going to split this like 50-50 or
Right.
we're going to split it 70-30 or whatever it happens to be. But I think for us, it's important. It's always going to be a dialogue between the farmer and between us of we have invested, we've meaningfully invested and meaningfully improved the lives of not only our workers but these surrounding communities. Where does the profit share lie in that realm? I imagine part of it's going to be if you lock in pricing, maybe we're taking a bit of a hit when pricing is down the drain, but then we're doing a bit better when pricing is higher. So there's going to be a balance there. But it's important to note a lot of these farmers still have their own facilities, right? So they still have some control over if they sell to us or if they don't sell to us. So that keeps us honest in terms of there are a lot of buyers all over the place, right? We're not the only ones. So that keeps us honest as well in terms of what we offer to farmers in terms of what we're going to purchase. The price for coffee is posted every day by the National Federation for Coffee Growers in Colombia. So they know what the price is, right? And so we always are going to need to provide a premium above that pricing depending on quality. So that's with that as a transparent piece of information, that's something that we can always, we always need to work off of.
Yeah. And like you said, they don't have to take on the risk of the quality differential.
Oh yeah.
If they're selling the cherries to you versus parchment.
It's a much easier product to sell.
Right.
And so a lot already see the value in it. Some regions that they've already gotten used to this. They'll sell to wet mills that are near them. But these wet mills are way they have technology from like the 1950s, right? So they can't offer the same sort of value that we can offer.
Is the investment in Colombia is that still kind of in its infancy? I mean, you're saying all the other wet mills are built, 70 years ago. Obviously, there hasn't been a lot of investment in that sector for quite a while. Is it just been starting recently? Is that why you're able to do what you're doing right now, or has it been around for a while? Just not in agriculture.
So the investment for coffee, so a lot of the more advanced facilities have already, been built in Brazil and in Vietnam, where they're dealing with robusta, which is easier to process. It's easier to manage these sort of larger estates, and that's just always the investment has sort of more arrived to the farm level. In Colombia, partially because of the government controls that were put in place, the farm coffee farming in general was just really fragmented. So you did have large estates from large landholding families. That's those are the farms that we own, are farms that were owned by estates. But like I said before, 95% of farms in Colombia are these small farms. So the investment that did happen in Colombia happened higher up the value chain at the dry mill. So your large exporters and importers like Louis Dreyfus, EDNF Man, other big commodity traders do have more advanced facilities in Colombia, but they're just higher up the value chain. No one really saw the value in consolidating farmland and trying to manage these disparate groups. The foreign investment that did occur are from these commodity traders that are like, hey, I want a more stable production, so I'm going to build a facility. They're not going to buy these lands. In Brazil, on the other hand, Brazil has been a bit more economically developed than Colombia. If you look back a number of decades, they have these much larger estates that are much flatter and much easier to manage. It's easier to be like, all right, cool, I can drop 50 million and like purchase this farm and build out this facility. So part of it, yeah, it's just the sort of the nature of how the sector has changed in Colombia to where it made sense for us to start operating. And in some cases, the facilities might be new in Colombia, or maybe not new, but the technology has just always been the same in terms of how, what they have used. It's been rather manual processes. And when you're a farmer, even if you're like one of these large estate holders, they might have like 200 acres of farmland. You don't. That's not enough to warrant a huge investment in an optical sorter or in like
Right.
one of these massive facilities, and all of the R&D we've done in like how can we process our coffee in the best way. We don't have the same environment that Brazil does. So what are we going to do differently about operating here? We have 10,200 acres, so we're able to put an investment and make investments at that scale, as opposed to a lot of these farmers that are just much smaller.
So speaking of investment, what we started out the episode with talking about you're a part of the Legacy Group, which is the management company for Green Coffee Company, right?
Yeah.
So you want to talk a little bit about that structure of investor relationship and management company, what that looks like, because I'm sure a lot of listeners, that's not a scale that they're used to really seeing a lot in agriculture. If you want to talk a little bit more about that, and then also what you guys have coming up here shortly.
Sure. So an investment in the Green Coffee Company is an investment in the company, right? So it's a U.S. Holding company, right? So the investment occurs into it's a U.S. dollar investment into the Delaware holding company. What Legacy Group does as an investment manager is it manages GCC on behalf of investors. So Cole Shepard, Adam Jason, and myself really liaison the most with our investors. We bring on new investment. We present the financial projections, the investor presentations. We work with the management team to make sure that things are still progressing as we have promised for our investors. Cole and Adam both have seats on the board, right? So they're constantly looking for ways to make sure that we're generating the most value on behalf of investors. But investors are the ones that own the vast majority of the business, and Legacy Group just sort of works to make sure that investors are being properly represented in the growth of the business. it'd be really hard for someone, someone with a very small percentage ownership to have a sense of what to do and how to manage a business. So we decided that this structure was the best, and making sure that investors are going to get the most value for their investment, and while making sure that we're operating the business in a way that's going to generate the most long term value. So it's been a really productive relationship. As you mentioned, we are about to launch a raise at about mid January for any accredited investors who would like to get involved with us and be part of this story as we grow the business from, we started with 610 acres. We now have 10,200, over 20
It's
million in
incredible.
revenue this year, profitable, so this is a real, it's not like a pipe dream. This is a real business that has a really exciting future. Right now we're projecting, we our goal is to IPO in 2026. So it's a shorter term investment in terms of what we're looking to do. We're looking to build out these business lines, roasted coffee in the U.S. Through Ted, who's going to help build out that business. Create the best coffee business in Colombia we possibly can, and then build out this byproduct business. And then for us, the way we look at it, an IPO is not the end of the story. An IPO, in some ways, is the start. It's the ability for investors who've been with us a while and anyone else to, even out the position after we predict, significant gains. But then for us, it's a way to continue to raise capital, to continue to grow the business and create a dominant market position in Colombia. Our hope is to own eventually 10% of Colombian production, which is about 1% of total green coffee production in the U.S. In the world. So that's sort of where we're going. We'll be raising around $15 million starting in mid-January for any accredited investors who'd like to get involved. So I'm happy to if you are interested in learning more, I am available to chat.
Yeah, and we'll definitely put that in the show notes. Anyone that is interested in that can get a hold of you that way. So IPO is an initial public offering, right? So you're
Yep.
looking at going to the large open public capital markets rather than just getting investment from accredited investors at that point. Why do you believe that you should do that down the road? Is that basically just so investors that started early can realize some of those gains, or is there more to it than that?
No, I mean, for us, more than anything, it's we believe that public capital markets are going to provide the ability for us to raise the most money and continue to grow the business and continue to generate value for our investors. So for us, we see that as a key way to keep growing the business. Public markets traditionally are just we believe that both normal individuals as well as larger groups like pension funds and others will be able to see the value that we're generating and put in meaningful capital to continue to grow this dominant market share. If we exit to we will take we're going to look at every opportunity that comes up depending regardless of what our plans are. Our plans are to IPO. If there is another opportunity to exit, we would look into it. But we believe that this is going to be the best way for us to continue to grow the business. We would, I think what we have seen with larger players that could potentially buy out GCC, we don't think that they would be able to see the same value that we see in what the business is going to do, and we see a public offering as a much better way to continue to on that growth trajectory of raising real capital. We've only raised 65 we have raised $65 million so far. That's a lot of money.
Only, yeah.
But when you
done
look
a lot
at
with it though.
Absolutely. But when you look at trying to completely revamp Colombian coffee, it's we want to do a lot more, and we have huge ambitions to do a lot more and to keep growing the business and not to become a small piece of a large to be a small cog in a large machine that's just trying to own a little bit of coffee. We're trying to to really build something that matters for investors, for the industry, for all of our stakeholders.
And like you said, it's you're looking at it long term, which is how you should in an agricultural enterprise, right? Whereas a
Yeah,
lot of those companies that they might be a P&G company um,
yeah,
that would want to buy you out, they don't necessarily have the same line of sight, that long term thinking on a business like that. So
yeah, yeah. Trees take time to grow.
that's right.
It's not something that you can just yeah. It's this is a business, and so everything that we've done from the seed to the cup has been to build a business that we can all be really proud of, and to build a business that's going to be here for the long term.
I'm probably about halfway through the questions that I had to ask, or that I would want to ask you. So I'm going to ask you back at some point in the future, probably again. I do have one more question though before you go,
Sure.
that I like to ask most of our guests. Um, so you didn't necessarily come from an agricultural background, um, but you are very much immersed in it today.
Yes,
What
that's true.
what advice would you have somebody that's in, just starting in their career, kind of like where you were at when you had the option of going into investment banking, and then you kind of pivoted and went this direction with the Green Coffee Company? What advice do you have to them? What opportunities do you see in the future in the coffee business that you would be excited about talking or sharing?
Sure. I mean, I think I'd sort of split it up into two different types of people. One would be in the U.S., right? That people who want to stay in the U.S. and work in agriculture in the U.S. I had the great opportunity to work part time at one of the largest wine companies in the U.S. during my MBA, as well as a sustainable agriculture focused private equity and private credit group that invests a lot with farmers. What I see there and what I saw there is that there is a huge generational shift that is happening from from people who, from older families to the younger kids that are in need of financing. Agriculture is such an exciting and dynamic space, especially as we confront climate change. There is so much good work to be done at the farm level. People really lose track of where their food comes from. I mean, I think it's just such an exciting space to be in. Whether you're doing ag tech, you're helping farmers in a whole host of ways. I love going out to the farms and actually seeing what we're producing and seeing the value that's being generated. Right, I can go out and I can see the coffee that's growing on the trees and being like, this is what's making money, as opposed to where you're working always. I work a lot behind a desk, but when you're only working behind a desk, you can lose sight of making something. And I love the aspect of making something, and how much hard work goes into making something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the U.S., when it comes to agriculture, there's this huge generational change that's happening. We need to build technologies and actually work with farmers, not just sort of throw technologies at them. You need to actually go and spend time with farmers and figure out what they're struggling with, and make something that's going to be useful for everyone in a supply chain. So I think there's immense opportunities there, whether you're starting your own farm that's going to source locally to like your local town, or working at one of the larger groups in the U.S. that's supporting farmers in other ways. I think when it comes to coffee, it's just such a dynamic product. I would recommend, like the more research you do about it, the more you see how many hands it touches.
Yeah.
And I just can't help but get passionate about and inspired by this drink we consume every day. I mean, it's crazy to see how hard it is to make. And the opportunities that are present. I think there are there's plenty of roasters and that sort of thing that just deals with this final end product. But there's tons of innovation happening in coffee. Tons of startups that are trying to use different portions of the coffee cherry to make products. I talk a lot with startups that are trying to make interesting products with coffee cherries. One of them is out of the Netherlands. One of them is in the U.S. They're trying to make real products that consumers will like. And so, I would encourage, if that's something of interest, creating value from trash. I mean, that's an really exciting future for coffee. Is how do we monetize this? A lot of other products have been monetized. Coffee is just not yet.
Right.
And so you can be at the forefront of bringing additional value to something that was trash. That's where I'd recommend you look.
Awesome. Well, those are some great suggestions. And Robby, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. Where can people find out more about you and about Green Coffee Company?
Yeah, no, Paul, thank you so much for having me. You can find out more about Legacy Group and the work we do at our LinkedIn. If you just Google Legacy Group Columbia, we'll come right up. My email is robby.k, robby.k at legacy-group.co. You could reach out to me directly. Green Coffee Company, if you just Google Green Coffee Company, it'll pop right up. If you want to reach out to them. We have a very basic right now roasted coffee sales channel that you can purchase coffee at that comes directly from our farms. It's called Abira. So ABIRA coffee.com. Those are some places you can look and find us. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you're interested in investing or working with us, I'm available.
Robby Kuster, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Paul.
Well, that was a fascinating conversation with Robby Kuster from Green Coffee Company. I know I really enjoyed doing it, and I hope you take the time to connect with Robby. If you look in the show notes, you should find all the information there to do so. I would love to personally hear from you, so if you could connect with us on social media, or you can find in the show notes our email address to connect with us. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode and how we're doing on the show. So please reach out, and I'd love to hear from you. As always, please like and subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, I'm Paul Windemuller from Ag Culture Podcast.